Let's talk about the Golden State Warriors. I don't know what we're going to talk about. Well, there's stuff we're going to talk about, but they are still sort of in a holding pattern. One of the weird teams that hasn't made many moves or any moves, honestly, at this point. We're going to get into all of that, why that's happening, and what could potentially be around the corner with the host of the Locked On Warriors podcast, Charlie Walter. It's all coming up. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and of course Jimmy Butler is my favorite player. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We're available on all platforms. All right, we're here. We're ready to talk about the Golden State Warriors, a team that decides they're, at the moment, just going to go in with 2/3 of a roster. It's like 10 guys signed. They haven't made a single move in this offseason. There's a lot of stuff brewing, and we assume that things are going to happen, but they haven't at this point. But that's okay, because we're here to talk to Charlie Walter, the host of the Locked On Warriors podcast, about all of that. Charlie, welcome back to the show to talk about this Warriors team, and I expect that you know a lot of the questions that I'm going to ask you here.
It's good to be here, man. It's good to hear that Jimmy Butler is one of your favorite players.
I
remember
Jimmy.
His days at Marquette. I saw the highlights and, the playoff games when he was making the great runs for the Heat and great games for the Sixers in the postseason, but can't say that I was dialed in day after day to Jimmy Butler, and he's quickly become one of my favorite players too, man. Selfless, plays the game the right way.
What I like about that is the fact that came across as sincere, but anyone who watches this show continually knows that I can't stand Jimmy and the way that he goes about so many things with what he has done over many, many, many different stops. But I'm glad I'm glad the sincerity played, because he annoys me to absolutely no end. But he's here on this Warriors team, so it's going to be good for maybe 12 months, 18 months, and then we'll see what happens after that. But that's not what we're going to start with in this show. What we're going to start with is someone who, at the start of last season, the Golden State Warriors, the word was coming out that Brandin Podziemski was going to be out here, going to be taking 10 threes a game, and he was going to be this big shooter. And of course, that was always bullshit when it was said. It was bullshit when it happened. He had a really poor start to the season. But over the second half of the year, Charlie, Brandin Podziemski started to look better. Things started to come into shape. And Steve Kerr, as I like to call him on the show, the foreseeable future legend, because he will tell you without any hesitation in his voice, this is the lineup we're going for the foreseeable future. And then 2 days later, it'll be different. Podziemski was in and out and in and out, in and out. My question to you is he locked in to this starting group? Now, again, understand that the roster has a million holes in it. Is Podziemski locked in? Is he the starting spot in between Butler and Steph?
I think the signing of D'Anthony Melton, which appears to be all but a lock at this point, a handshake agreement, would make me think that they'd have, open competition in the camp. We'd see how healthy D'Anthony Melton was. We'd see if he'd recovered from that ACL surgery, and then it would kind of be like last year, may the best man win. Podziemski was just I would say a tale of two seasons, but it was like a tale of every single month. There was just couple weeks he'd be great, couple weeks he'd be shooting 26% from three. Lasting images we got from Brandin Podziemski were, I guess the lasting images of the regular season were awesome. Last 2 months, his splits were like 16-6 on 50% from the floor and 46% from three. Like, he was fantastic. Goes into the playoffs and has one great game in the Houston series, was sick one of those games, remember? And then had one good game in the Wolves series. It just happened to be the last game where he had 28-6 in a loss in game 5. But aside from that, was not a great postseason, didn't shoot the ball well. You would hope that it's just kind of the sea legs and, the first playoffs that he's ever been in, the struggles that young players have in those positions, and that he's ready to go this upcoming season. But, I mean, overall, I think it was a really good sophomore season in scale for any 22-year-old, let alone one that, came into the season with mild expectations.
Yeah, so it was. He was really frustrating early on. He couldn't get things rolling. And you're right, he had that really hot stretch down towards the end. And the playoffs are an interesting thing because it can be a focus of many, especially people who aren't playing fantasy, but there's not really a carryover of performance, production, minutes, and rotation from the playoffs into a regular season. It's like teams, and rightfully so, they treat them as almost different games in different sports at times, and that doesn't necessitate that he's going to fall back off. But like again, it is a weird situation. But the guy you said, D'Anthony Melton, I would find it. I like D'Anthony Melton a lot. I think he's a really impactful player. The fact that there's really no other sort of backup point guard on this team at all, and someone who can handle the ball, I would think he would need to play some of that role as the backup guy. And coming off the ACL injury, it does make it a little bit harder to figure that out. And the other part of that is that the other guy who could potentially be in the mix for that spot is an even more inconsistent player. And you would have experienced this firsthand last season, the Buddy Hield roller coaster, where it's like, okay, he'll be unbelievable for 3 games. Then you go, what is this man doing for the next 20 games? And then you can't trust him at all. And Steve Kerr rightfully brings him in and out of the lineup. So it's not, to me, there's a huge level of competition for Podziemski. But also, if he starts or not, I don't think it matters. I think that those 27 minutes a game that he played last season and whatever it was, 18 usage, I expect both those numbers to increase, irrespective of if he starts or not.
Yeah, I think so. Really, aside from the guys that you just mentioned, ball handling wise, it's potentially Taron Armstrong of the G League, and then maybe Seth Curry. He's been rumored to be someone the Warriors could target if a Jonathan Kuminga sign and trade goes through. Let's say the Kings come back with a separate offer and Malik Monk winds up in Golden State, then that's a name that we'd be talking about. But as of right now, it's Pods, it's Steph Curry. Jimmy and Draymond can obviously handle the load sometimes and bring the ball up the floor. But aside from that, you don't want to give Buddy Hield the ball to bring the up the floor. We know that for a fact. You give him the ball, Josh, and you say, let it fly. Don't dribble, whatever you do. But he was much better, I thought, Buddy, once Jimmy joined the fold. I think his expectation and role kind of turned into, we just need you to be a sharpshooter. We don't really need you to create. That's what Jimmy's doing. And I think Jimmy also helped Brandin Podziemski in that regard.
I agree with
where
that.
it took a little bit of the pressure off him. And I mean, he made everyone's game a little bit easier. The issue was in the last series against the Wolves, once Curry went out, Jimmy's role slides up, and all of a sudden everyone else had higher expectations. Moody was hurt, Podziemski was hurt, and at that point they were pretty screwed once they lost game 3 in that tight one. It just, they weren't going to get it done. But yeah, I mean, Pods is, and I'd say Moody, if the roster is similar to what we think it's going to be, I mean, those are your 2 X factors. One of those guys has to make a significant jump. And considering that the Warriors need a scoring punch and Moody doesn't appear to be that scorer naturally, Pods has it in him a little bit to go out and put up 25 points in a given night. Now, he's not going to average that, but Moody, there maybe been 1 or 2 times in his young career that he's done that. Pods did it the last game of the season. So
yeah, it will be interesting to see exactly how they roll with that. I do think that organizationally they do place a little bit more upside importance on Podziemski versus Moody, even though I do like Moody. Moody sort of just fallen into this role where it's like, I'll just do all of the sort of little things and I'll be an impactful guy in that respect, but his ability to ramp up or take on more responsibility always seems to be a little bit lacking. Now, whether that's a confidence thing, I don't know, but it always seems like he's out there, he's just, he does these little things well, and he did that well, and he did that well, but like you need him to do more, and like then it doesn't work, it sort of falls apart. We're going to come back though and talk about the
point of attack.
Yeah,
I thought he was a good point of attack. Long arms, he was picking up Ja Morant in that playing game, so that's kind of what he does defensively. Offensively, catch and shoot guy, you don't expect too much.
Yeah, he improves in these little areas. Oh, so he's worked into being defensive, and then like then the shooting falls off, and then like the ball handling's not there, and he's a frustrating player. But there's something else that's more frustrating, which we're going to come back and talk about. That is the Jonathan Kuminga situation. But today's episode, it is brought to you by Open Phone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Maybe Mike Dunleavy doesn't have Open Phone, so therefore he's not receiving the phone calls about, hey, the NBA transaction period started and you can sign somebody or make a move. But if he had Open Phone, he would never miss one of those calls because they've got that AI agent that handles the after-hour calls, answers common questions, and captures leads, so you never miss a customer or a free agent signing. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. OpenPhone lets you manage those business calls and texts all from a single app, and you can get people in your team to get in there as well, jump in without missing a beat. OpenPhone is offering listeners 20% off your first month at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That is openphone.com/lockedonnba. If you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, No missed customers. Okay, so now it is time for us to address the Jonathan Kuminga elephant in the room. Because obviously, at the time of me recording this, it's the 6th of August for me, it's the 5th for you. Jonathan Kuminga is unsigned. We've heard these rumors of the Chicago Bulls being interested, the Phoenix Suns being interested, but what we always keep coming back to is the Sacramento Kings and their potential interest. And you referenced it earlier about this idea of a Malik Monk, Devin Carter type sign and trade scenario, which could happen, but who knows? And I think they desperately actually need a player of Malik Monk's caliber. If Malik Monk went to this team, he'd have a gigantic role. He'd have to play a lot of minutes. He'd do a lot of ball handling. He'd do a lot of scoring and a lot of shooting. He would be important, but who knows? He seems to be out of favor everywhere in the league. What is the latest on John Kuminga? Because the latest rumors, whispers, rumblings is that the Warriors are expecting to go into the season with him on the roster. How that works, I've got no idea. I don't think it's going to be a qualifying offer. I think they're going to, if they do that, they'll sign him with the intention of trading later on. But is that how you're approaching this? And if that is the case, then why are we still at hold-up scenarios with other free agent moves?
You know, I'd love to see Kuminga in a public setting, an interview, YouTube, Instagram, something to where we could read his poker face on what's going on with this situation. Because last we've heard, the Golden State Warriors have shut down all sign and trade offers. They are keeping Jonathan Kuminga. Joe Lacob believes that nothing the Warriors have been offered in a sign and trade is remotely close to what his value is. So he's going to start the season on the Golden State Warriors. Two ways for that to happen. One, he could take that $7.9 million qualifying offer, gamble on himself. I think it is crazy for him to do that.
Crazy.
The other is he takes a 2-year, $45 million deal. That no trade clause is waived. And then there's a team option in there, which isn't the worst thing in the world for Kuminga, because after the first year, it would allow the team that he traded to renegotiate his contract and potentially extend him long term. So the plan is, from everything we've heard, Jonathan Kuminga is not going to be a Golden State Warrior long term, but he is going to start the season on the Dubs. Now, what this would do, it would take away that base year compensation, goofy CBA stuff to where you only take back half the money. And in order to get a Malik Monk trade done, you have to attach like a Buddy Hield or a Moses Moody just to make the money work. That no longer becomes an issue. You can get Malik Monk and potentially someone else from the Kings straight up by making the money work with a midseason trade. There are also other teams that may be sputtering, that may be looking to go a different direction, whatever. More trade partners come about. That is the best thing possible for the Golden State Warriors. The issue is Jonathan Kuminga has made it clear that he does not want to be a Golden State Warrior. And how often do you go into a season? Sometimes it happens in football, but typically when it happens in the NFL, the players just sit out and don't play. In the NBA, we don't see it a ton where a player goes in with the expectation of being traded during the season and not wanting to be there whatsoever, with a coach that DNP'd him in the playoffs, despite having the capabilities to literally come back on cold feet and score 30 points in the playoff game. So the issue with Kuminga is the Warriors were winning a lot of games without him. They were 15-1 once Jimmy Butler got infused into the lineup. Kuminga rejoins the team, and they were still good. It's not like you could point to Kuminga's emergence as the team not winning the second round playoff game. That would be because Steph Curry got hurt, but Kuminga did have a chance to lead the team to one playoff win, and he did his part, scoring 25 points per game in the series, but the Warriors lost every single game. Now you could point to Podziemski missing every single shot, and Moses Moody sitting on the bench in some games with an ice pack on his knee, and Jimmy Butler playing really bad in most of those games except for one or two.
Playoff Jimmy,
man. So it's just it's a weird situation right now with Kuminga, and it's very conflicting amongst, I would say, Warriors. I'm sure there are different people on the staff that feel differently about this situation, and then I think just if you polled the fan base, there are a lot of people that really believe in Kuminga, that think the Warriors have been jerking him around, and then there are other fans that would say, and I'm kind of in this camp as well. Look, if he was doing what Steve Kerr wanted him to do, he'd probably be getting more minutes and playing a role because they need him to a certain degree. They need that athleticism. They need that size. They need wings. So is Steve Kerr an idiot? I guess that's what we're going with here. Because if truly he's getting DNP'd and it's something on Kerr, then that's news to me, because I feel like he knows what he's doing.
I feel like he does as well. And he's one of these players, you're right, because you preempted what my next line of questioning was going to be, that like he is that guy with like, yeah, they've done him so wrong, and he's look at the scoring that he's able to do. And I go, yeah, that's cool, but what about anything else? Like, can you shoot well? No. Can you hit free throws? No. Do you pass well? No. Do you have good situational IQ? No. Do you defend well? No. Do you rebound well? Not really. Like, what do you do? Like, you are in a situation where if he gets the ball a lot and he's in a spot where they allow him to drive, he'll score a lot of points. But that doesn't make the team necessarily better. And he's shown an unwillingness, and I'm sure this is part of the Steve Kerr thing, to buy in and go like, hey, do some other stuff. Like, do the little things. Do the other things to help the team get better in these other areas. If he went to, say, the Brooklyn Nets or to a terrible team and they said, here's 30 usage, you can score 25 points, I'm sure he would. But what about the other things? What about the things that make you indispensable? What about the things? Because he's had these stretches, and then he has these stretches where he's like, has this guy ever like played organized basketball before? Why is he standing in this position? Why is he taking these shots? Why does he think that he's better than everyone on the team when he's clearly not? And there's all that sort of stuff, which I'm sure for a team with so many championship aspirations and obviously championships, they go, well, we don't need this. We don't need him to play this role. If he is back on the team, and we do not, nobody expects that he ends the season playing for this team. But again, the expectation is he starts with the team. Do you think that he's in the starting lineup? Is it going to be Butler, Kuminga, Green, and then the Melton, Podziemski, and Steph? Will they play him in a bench role? Like, how stubborn will Steve Kerr be with this? Like, what will his role even be?
Let's hit this from just about every angle, because there's so many. Let's start with the fact that he did not get a lot of burn with Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry on the floor at the same time. And the original notion was he can't play at the same time as Jimmy Butler. Same position. They can't play on the floor.
Both don't shoot very well.
That was debunked in the playoffs, right? Because game 3, they were awesome on the floor together. And really the entire series, that's when Kuminga was doing most of his work. He was really utilizing Jimmy's vision on his cuts and was making the most of his opportunities with Jimmy on the floor. Everyone plays better with Steph on the floor, right? His gravity, maybe not. Steve Kerr's made it known that Steph and Draymond are 2 turnover-happy guys. Jonathan Kuminga is a turnover-happy guy. And those 3 can't coexist on the floor together. Kerr's also mentioned the fact that Kuminga, I mean, I don't even know if he's mentioned it. Just use your eyes. He doesn't swing it, right? He gets the ball and he could be a black hole. He has tunnel vision, and it's not a bad thing when you're shooting 45% from the floor, whatever he is. He's consistently 7 of 12 or 5 of 9, whatever. Like, he scores pretty efficiently in his opportunities. He's solid from the mid-range, has a nice little turnaround, can be lethal when he gets downhill. It's either a bucket or he's getting stripped, one of the two, or he's getting the line and shooting 60%, whatever. I think it's Draymond Green. That's really the player that's blocking him right now. And I think if Draymond Green was hurt in any situation this season, you'd see Jonathan Kuminga have a massive role on this team, because they need Kuminga to step in and provide that size and provide some scoring and change things up. But with Draymond Green on the roster, it's just hard to see all those guys coexisting together, especially with Al Horford in there. So I would assume that to start the season, he'd be coming off the bench in a similar position that we saw the last month of the season, where he was 7th man, 6th man, whatever. But that's where we fall into the wrinkle of Kerr kind of has to keep him happy, because Kuminga does hold a little bit of leverage in that regard, to where you want Kuminga to feel like he's a part of the squad and everything, and not be a ghost around the locker room like he was last season. So that's, I mean, there are just so many different angles to hit this Kuminga thing from. The question is going to be, are the Warriors better off just taking what they can get? Malik Monk finding a way to get the most value possible and just getting rid of this distraction as a whole? Or can they mend this relationship with a player that by all accounts has not been around the facilities, does not appear to be talking to the front office, anything like that? He's kind of doing his own thing. He's talking with other teams, talking with Scott Perry from the Kings. He wants to go elsewhere. He's found his home that he wants to go to. Is that a smart thing, going into the season with a player that does not want to be on your squad, even though you know that the best option is to keep him and his salary for trade options down the line?
I'll say this before we get into the last segment about this team is that, like, when the two teams that are heavily interested in acquiring your skills are the Chicago Bulls and the Sacramento Kings, maybe you are just better off not having him on the team and just get
And the Washington Wizards and the Phoenix Suns.
Getting rid of that distraction and getting rid of that player who plays in that sort of way, because all those teams have shown an inability to construct rosters that make sense. So then maybe you just maybe the fact that other good teams aren't like you're poking their head around should give some sort of an idea about how maybe that translates across. But again, lots of stuff to happen. We'll talk about more of it in a sec. Today's episode is also brought to you, though, by Game Time. You may have decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family. Maybe it is game day, and you suddenly realize you want to be there in the stands. You're going, maybe Charlie, you're going down to Oracle to check out a night game for the faltering, the stumbling San Francisco Giants, but maybe you can get cheaper tickets. And with Game Time, if it's on game day, the tickets and the prices get better. They get cheaper for you the closer you get to the beginning of the game. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple, and prices on the app actually drop the closer that you get to first pitch, and so they've got incredible last-minute deals. Game Time is also the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for upcoming Major League Baseball games. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we've said it many times, and I'll continue to say it. This team has done absolutely nothing in this offseason. They seem to be hung up on the Jonathan Kuminga scenario, waiting for things. I'm not sure why that is precluding so much. I guess it's to do with flexibility, roster spots, salaries, all that sort of thing. But the two names that we have heard a lot about guys who probably or should be or are likely to be arriving on this team. We already talked about D'Anthony Melton. And the other name you just mentioned was Al Horford, who, again, doesn't have a home. He is going to play somewhere. He's 1,000,000 years old. I think he would be an awesome get for the Warriors. And I'll say this. If Al Horford does arrive, you talked about Draymond Green blocking Jonathan Kuminga. I think that Al Horford pairing with Jonathan Kuminga actually would enable Jonathan Kuminga to play closer to the best version of himself, because what does Al Horford do? Low usage, swings the ball, defends well, and shoots. Like, that is the sort of perfect, and obviously a well-respected veteran who's going to, I would assume, put him in better spots. Now, if Al Horford does sign and John Kuminga is still around or whatever they do you think that they persist with Draymond Green as the starting center, or does Horford start next to Green, Butler, Podziemski, Curry? Like, how do they run that? And then Jackson Davis coming off the bench, and Quinten Post and his 1,000,000 threes per minute setup that he was running as a rookie. How do they run that spot? Or is Horford, obviously he's not going to play back-to-backs. We know his body can't handle that. Or is he going to be running this 26-minute bench role as a closer, not a starter? How would you envisage that fitting in?
I'm going to take both Steve Kerr and Draymond Green's words at face value when they say that they don't want Draymond Green to play center.
Fair.
Much, if any. You know, he's there when they need him, but that's it. They want a legit center to come in and really make sure that Draymond doesn't play that role. We've also heard that Quinten Post is expected to play more significant minutes, or at least more consistent minutes than he did a season ago. We saw games where he'd play 20. We also saw games where he'd come in, get a cup of coffee, and be out. But sounds like those two are kind of your center position plans, with Draymond at the 5 being kind of an emergency as needed type thing, or just down the stretch of games, Horford's in foul trouble, Horford's not available, then Draymond potentially slots over to the 5. The other interesting question would be Trayce Jackson-Davis. I, at this point, am not expecting a ton from Trayce Jackson-Davis. It's more expecting nothing, hoping for some sort of big-time growth. But he was better his rookie year, or at least had more opportunities his rookie year than in his sophomore year a season ago. But we saw him in the Wolves series, and he provided some rim protection. He was finishing around the rim. He's not a bad player by any means, just doesn't necessarily fit, or didn't necessarily fit, with Kevon Looney on the squad. Looney goes away. Trayce Jackson-Davis is probably going to have to be reinfused unless, they don't bring him back. And if they don't bring him back, I don't know how you would have enough size. So I would expect Trayce to be on the team, and that kind of be your center rotation, with Al and Quinten being able to stretch the floor. That fits exactly what Steve Kerr's trying to do. You'd imagine Horford's 25, 26 minutes per game. And then, 15 to 20 for Quinten Post, and then maybe you get a few minutes here and there with either Trace or with Draymond at 5 position. But I would expect Draymond to not play a bunch of 5 until they get to the point where they need some buckets and they feel like he gives you the best opportunity to really get up and down the floor.
Quinten Post is an interesting person because obviously no one really knew much about him. He was on a two-way early in the season. They could not afford to have him on a full-time contract because of apron restrictions, and that was converted later in the season. And he came in and he bombed threes more than almost anybody in the league. He was at the 94th percentile in terms of three-point attempts per 75 possessions. He was just out there hitting them. And he hit them at 41% as a 7-footer. Now, there's a lot of other things that he can't do well. But as that spacing guy, especially when you're running Draymond and you're running Jimmy Butler out there, like having like the Steph Curry shooting and then the Quinten Post shooting, like there is value in that. What does he need to do, Post, to be able to step up into a role where instead of being a 20-minute guy that some days will play 17 minutes or some days play 24, like what would he need to show to push to be a 26-minute guy or a 27-minute guy?
I would say defensively working on positioning and just working on the things that he can control. He's got a great motor. He is more physical than you would give a Euro skinny, one of those dudes credit for. Like he does have some dog in him. I mean, you'll see it from time to time. He'll block some shots and play to his size to some degree, but typically he's pick and pop. He's going to be around the perimeter, can step into some threes, can sidestep and knock down some threes. Like 3-point shooting's the name of his game. He is elite, elite. One of the best 7-footers I've legit ever seen in terms of just pure stroke and ability to knock down a 3-point shot at a 40% clip consistently. But post moves, we don't see too much of them. That's something that he can work on, but that's never going to be his game. And I think Kerr and company know that. Like he's a pick and pop. He's trailer, find him at the 3-point line, use Steph's gravity to get some open looks. That's his game. But defensively, can he hold his own? Can he get better at rebounding? Positionally, will he just figure out where to be at all times to where his defensive IQ is better as a season ago? If those things happen, then I think he will drastically improve because there's a reason why he was a late 2nd-round pick and a 5-year college guy or whatever. He just he doesn't necessarily have it in him to be some physical specimen down low. That's not his game. He's a true stretch 5.
He is. It was impressive, but you're going to do more than that.
And on the perimeter, he gets cooked. That's another thing that he can't help, right? He just needs to be in better position.
Yeah, look, he's got a lot of downsides. Like one part, elite, unbelievably good. Everything else, we need to get that stuff. And like, when you're working with Draymond and Jimmy, like the defensive stuff is there, but you got to do more than what you do. And it is an interesting spot that he is in because there is obviously a role there that could be expanded into something more if some of those other things come along. Now, I think that might be all we're talking about until we figure out what else this team is going to do at some point. Who knows when they're going to actually bring some other guys in. But one thing they do have, Charlie, is multiple Australians on the roster. So we'll see if that means any good luck. Probably not. But they do have that. So you can enjoy the stylings of Taran Armstrong and Alex Tui for this upcoming season. Here we go. So Alex Tui, I've been making fun of people on my show. How would you pronounce that name as an American? Because obviously Alex is Australian. How do you pronounce his surname?
I've been saying Tui. Is it Tuhe?
No. It's Tui. I thought a lot of Americans would just be saying it's Tuhi. But it is.
Yeah, people say it wrong all the time. I said Tui on draft night, just guessing, and then I heard someone else say it, and I'm like, I think that's right. And people started saying Tuhe, and I was like, I think I'm right.
You're bang on. It's Tui, and that's good. I'm glad we've got that sorted. That's one of probably the most important things we need to talk about. The other thing we need to talk about is that you host the Locked On Warriors podcast, so people need to check that out for more of the updates, and especially when there's resolution on the Jonathan Kuminga scenario, and when this team decides to finally sign somebody and see how this roster fleshes out. Charlie will have it all covered for you over on Locked On Warriors. Charlie, thanks again for coming on and talking about this team and the weirdness that is this offseason so far.
Appreciate you guys. Do something, Warriors. We're waiting.
Yeah, I hope it happens soon. We need that info. So, thanks a lot, Charlie. All right, so this Warriors team is weird. We know who's starting. It's Jimmy, it's Draymond, it's Steph. And then there's Podziemski. It could be Hield. It could be Post. It could be Kuminga. It could be Moody. It could be Melton. It could be Horford. There's a lot still to happen. And of course, when we do the secondary team preview shows, the fantasy related one. We'll cover more of that stuff that'll come in September. In the meantime, if you want to make sure you don't miss that, plus the Charlotte Hornets season preview show, which is coming tomorrow, you subscribe. Audio, video, double bang, you know how it all works. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.